Hello, everyone, watching live and watching at home. This is Drew Murray from Master Tier Gaming, and this is the first campaign diary that I am doing. This should be a more regular thing, one to help me keep things more sort of in the forefront of my mind, help deconstruct a few things, but also to help you guys with running your own campaigns. You've got more people putting campaign diaries up so that you can compare notes and see how other GMs are doing things. I think it's a really good idea. It's something that Kerry from Tabletop Crafter has encouraged me to do. She joins me on Crit It and Hit It every other Friday, and she's helping me along with adding some extra things to be putting up here to help people out. So that's what I'm doing. That's this. This is here. This is now. This is relevant. So, cutting all of that to the cutting room floor, let's carry on with the campaign diary. So, first things first, this is a Harry Potter RPG. This is not a role-playing game system that is unique to Harry Potter. This is the Fate Accelerated system that I'm using to run this campaign. This is a campaign that I set up and started running for people at Geek Retreat, which is a shop in Leeds where you can just go in, have some milkshakes and Coke and cheesecake or whatever, and play games. They've got a selection of board games and things there. I'm not promoting it as part of like a paid advertisement for them, but they're really good, and it's a franchise, so technically it's an independent business. Andy, the guy that runs Geek Retreat, it's his business, and I do like helping local small businesses out whenever I can. So you get a free shout out. There you go. But yes, really good venue, really good players. I put up the ad saying I want to run a Harry Potter RPG. Anyone interested? And there was quite a response. In fact, if memory serves, this was a poll that I did, whether it's Harry Potter or something else, and the Harry Potter won by a landslide. So I did the Harry Potter game because people wanted to do it. And then I set about researching it, holding a session 0, and finding out what it was that the players wanted. And what the players seemed to want, overwhelmingly. Excuse me while I just quickly double check and make sure that sound is all good. I probably should have started doing that a while ago. But let's just double check and make sure that we're broadcasting properly, because that would not do if we weren't broadcasting properly. Let's try refreshing Twitch here, because it is not loading on my end. Aha! We're getting something now. How odd. I got an error. Well, let's just hope that things are going well. I can see the chat, however, so if anyone in the chat wants to let me know, just let me know. So we held a session 0, we discussed what we wanted, and what the party wanted overall was a sort of 1920s era Fantastic Beasts Harry Potter adjacent story. Something I was willing to do and I had a look into doing was something set in the school of Hogwarts, or another school where you could be students, or something more sort of Ministry of Magic centered, but still in a sort of contemporary era. But no, one of the pitches that I made was for a sort of 1920s Fantastic Beasts era thing. And then we narrowed it down to what the characters were. So we have Brad Chadwick, a disgraced Quidditch star who's had some scandalous activities caught by the tabloids. And this character is essentially the face of the party. He and 2 others have been hired by Dumbledore, these 2 others being Theodore, a vampire. Vampires are not really delved into in the Harry Potter books themselves, although the wider lore expands a little bit on them. But by and large, like what a vampire is and what is the deal with them is not really something expanded upon in Harry Potter literature. So that's something that I've decided to help the player in question tackle. So we have a vampire who is sort of our dark Newt Scamander character. This is someone who has studied fantastic beasts. They know a lot about monsters and that sort of thing. They, as a profession, capture monsters and sell them on the black market. So that's the thing. They capture fantastic beasts. And the third person in this party is someone who does the same thing for magic items and artifacts. He is a magic item apparator, as we've termed him. He's just a normal wizard. So we've got 2 wizards and a wizard vampire in this group, and these people are sorting out where these weird magic monsters are coming from. Dumbledore has hired them in his new appointment as the head of Hogwarts. He knows that something's going wrong. And so what I've done is I've made a plot that ties into the main plot. But if anyone has played the computer game Lord of the Rings, The Third Age, that is one of my favourite sort of turn-based role-playing games on a console. Lord of the Rings, The Third Age, for those that don't know, is a game where you are playing as Berethor and a bunch of other characters that you meet later on. But you are Berethor, a Gondorian that was sent after Boromir to like chase him down and see like if you can rend some aid. You get waylaid and you get stopped and you meet up with an elf and a dwarf and a ranger and a Rohirrim, and you basically meet the Fellowship but not the Fellowship. You are following hotly on the heels of the Fellowship. You end up in the mines of Moria after the Fellowship, and you are fighting the Balrog from behind. So you're supposed to accept that while the events of the Fellowship of the Ring are going on, your characters are on the other side of the Balrog, also attacking and fighting off goblins and Balrogs and things. That's what I was going for with this. So this would be people would be playing this Harry Potter role-playing game, and they would interact with events that they would know from the Harry Potter franchise, while still being a bit distant from it. This would allow us to have a little bit of freedom with the story. We could do whatever kind of story we wanted, but we could have that touching the universe that we would enjoy from playing a Harry Potter RPG and not some generic magic fantasy game. So, to that end, the plot of what's happened recently and why that's important to relate. We started off on an island in the Mediterranean. They got the mission from Dumbledore. You've got to go here. There's a deal going down for these weird magical monsters. We just know that it's bad people trading. So at the moment, you're just here to get information. So go there. So they apparate into this stone circle on this island and find that there's some shady characters doing a deal. There are 3 bad guys. 3 good guys, 3 bad guys. They sneak on down, and then we get to the end of the session, because that was the end of the session 0, sort of taster to get used to some of the mechanics. So a little bit of interaction with each other, a little bit of interaction with the bad guys, and then we break for that session. 2 weeks later, we meet up again, but one of the players has a birthday. So what we instead is with the 2 other characters, the magic item apparator and the monster bounty hunter vampire, we do a flashback, like how they got there, but to also add a bit of extra context to what we've just done. So what we did just do was they came across these guys on a small farmhouse on this island, and they found that there was a jar with loads of smoke inside and a little like leech thing that would whack against the glass. And they had no idea what this thing was. So I had, for this flashback, it would be explaining what this creature was, so that the monster expert, when we all came back, which we did yesterday, she would know all about these creatures. She would know what's up with them, what to do with them, and she would be able to act as the expert. That's what the plan was. That's what we were doing. So we did the flashback. They met a house elf. There was a haunted house. They found another vampire in Dublin. They were tasked to find and kill a guy, and they had to go through piles of paperwork to find out who it was that they're supposed to like take out. And it turns out that it's this vampire guy who hired them in the first place. He wanted to see what skills they had, what kind of sleuthing talents they had, but he's also been eliminating those that can find out who he is. So he's testing the limits of the ministry and other people that could try and like track him down and be aware of his activities. It's basically to try and keep tabs on those that might try and keep tabs on him. But they track him down to his job. He worked in a Muggle bank. They sneak their way in there, come across one of the bad guys that they do meet later on, and they steal one of these creatures, which is this leech thing. And I'd already, by this point, designed 3 such creatures. Or rather, come up with the names of 3 of these creatures and designed 2 of them. So these ones are the Fang Orgs. Now, Org as in AURG, or as in an augur. So these are creatures that can find vampires, find fangs. So these Fang Orgs are leeches that are attracted to vampires. They attach onto them and they leech the vampiricness from them. They had this jar of leeches. They found the head vampire dude, Cyrus Herod, which I was riffing on a lot of Egyptian mythology. So Cyrus Herod, Osiris, and Herod, the guy from the Bible that would, I think there were like 3 Herods or something. But yeah, that chased down the little baby Jesus and tried to kill all the babies in the area from that story. So I just wanted to make sure that he had a very J.K. Rowling-esque on-the-nose name of, this is a bad guy and here's his background. Stealing quite a bit from the Anne Rice vampire mythos, having the Egyptian connection. So, Cyrus Herod gets confronted by the party. They take out one of these leeches, hurl it at him. And so they see what the leeches do. And I saw this as the best opportunity to show off how dangerous these monsters can be. So I had it straight away attach onto him, leech the life out of him. He's dead. He's gone. And this leech is now engorged and ready to be picked up and collected again so that they can use it to experiment with and whatnot. So on and so forth. So then we get to last night's adventure, where we flash back forward again. And because it had been 6 weeks, we had a further gap. We had to miss one session because my daughter was born. I was in the hospital at the time. So I didn't see it as quite fitting for me to leave my wife and infant daughter that was a day old at the time to go and have a game of Harry Potter. But a couple of weeks later, we flash forward to yesterday. That's what we do. We play a game of Harry Potter. We pick up where we were, but because it had been such a time since we were all together and playing, I decided to time skip us from, instead of like mid-combat, which is always a bad place to leave off unless you keep meticulous notes. Instead of mid-combat, we would skip forward about a minute. And so it would be that kind of beginning of a TV episode, like you just saw them facing off inside a warehouse at the end of the last one. Now they're running out of the building and there's flames coming out the windows and you don't know exactly how that just happened, but that's what's going on. That's exactly how we started. The farmhouse was now on fire. The 2 people that came to exchange the money for these leeches, to buy the leeches, they are either petrified on the floor or stuck hovering on the ceiling, wandless. And Bartholomew Left-Hander, the sort of main villain of this piece, he was running across the beach trying to get to his boat and away from these people. He just got a broom out as well, and I was thinking this will be great. This will tie into the Quidditch Stars Quidditch skills. We'll have like an in-the-air spell slinging sort of chase on broomsticks. And over the ocean as well, we could have like whales coming up and crashing down, have it be really cinematic. There's a storm brewing. There's all these Muggle ships as well, so like trying to keep things, low key during all of that. It was going to be a really exciting time. It was going to be fantastic. Then the vampire decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to stop them from moving at all. I'm going to make a rope come out from the tip of my wand, wrap around the broom, and slam it into the ground. I'm going to stop him from being able to take off. And it worked. Oh, that kind of put a pin in that idea. And I was like, okay, I'll make something cool up later. And they very easily managed to overpower this guy. It seemed like that's what they were wanting to do, to interrogate him, to get some information. Because as far as they were concerned, they were sent here to get information. They don't have a lot. They know that there are these monsters. They know roughly what these monsters do. But why was a vampire selling anti-vampire monsters? And who is he selling them to? To what ultimate end? Who's working for whom? And all this mess. So, to help them have some context for this and not just be action, action, action all the time, I went, Bartholomew Left-Hander captured. Now, this is a good point for him to be captured. I'm not going to throw fate tokens your way and have a Deus Ex Machina come in and sweep him away, or have him try and apparate or anything like that. You've got him. And they interrogate him for a little bit, and just as they start interrogating him, I seed the idea that there's this massive silhouette of a grand frigate vessel on the horizon that's getting closer and closer. It's surrounded by smoke and clouds. And they ignore that, which I suppose is one option. But yes, they ignored the massive ship. They carried on interrogating the Left-Hander. And they managed to get from him the plan. The plan was to take these leeches and sell them to these guys, and these guys would just be another cog in the machine. That this Bartholomew Left-Hander doesn't really know much beyond the fact that he he collects things from Cyrus Herod, who we still believe to be alive, and sells them to people, taking a cut for himself. That he doesn't only work for Cyrus, that there is someone else called Horus, again, the Egyptian theme, but this is Horus spelled like the normal human person's name. But it's also obviously a code name, because Horus is a woman. And that's what we know. At this point, one of the players wants to find out what they know, and this being the fate system, I have her roll to create an advantage, so she can define something about this character. Rather than just discovering things about the character, getting to define it. And so I had the players help make this villain NPC, which I think is one of the really fun things about the fate system, is we can do that as part of the mechanics. It's not something to be done outside of the game like with Dungeons & Dragons. Yes, I could take the players aside and say, okay, I want a cool villain for you guys. What would work for you? In the game, using the mechanics of the game, you can help create a villain that is the perfect foil for these guys, or whatever they want to be facing at the time. So we create some traits for her. The ship gets closer and closer. And then I introduce who is perhaps my favourite NPC in a little while, and that is Winsome Hart. Winsome Hart is an obvious Gryffindor. Winsome Hart is your stereotypical swashbuckler knave. He's a nobleman with a wild, adventurous heart. He is what you might imagine like the extreme fop. I described him as having long flowing blonde hair, a blonde goatee. He was wearing fine clothes. Do you remember in the Thor film, the first and second Thor film, you had the Warriors 3. You had the big guy, Volstagg, and the other two I forget the names of. But you had the guy that wore sort of like feudal Japanese armor, and then you had the swashbuckler guy that wore like gold tunic and had a little rapier epee sword. Him. It is that gold tuniced rapier sword dude that Winsome Hart was modelled on as a person. He stood on the mast, declared that he was taking these criminals into custody for the Ministry of Magic, and the party immediately took to the guy. I knew it would be either they really liked him, and especially Brad Chadwick, the posh Quidditch star, who's got a bit of a disgraced history going on, is no longer playing Quidditch because he got caught in the wrong nightclubs and that sort of thing. He took to him. I knew that he would either love him or hate him, see him as a rival or see him as a comrade, and they took to each other really well. But the magic item dude, he decided to sneak on board the ship, put everyone to sleep, and started rummaging through the ship to see what there was to steal. Then he found an opportunity to steal the ship, which he took, which I didn't plan for at all. I had no clue that that was even an option, really. It wasn't a thing that occurred to me. I thought they would see the big ship, they would see that he's from the Ministry of Magic, and they would have a brief discussion, offload the bad guys, and move on to the next clue. They would follow on to who's this Horus lady, and what were these monsters going to be used for. So they would follow the clues and go to somewhere in France. Didn't happen. Instead, because one of the players was trying to steal the ship, and I knew I didn't want them to just steal the ship and just leave Winsome behind and sort of have this bitter scenario play out. I knew I wanted to bring Winsome back, and I wanted, now that I saw that they liked him, I wanted to sort of maintain that and not just like double back on it straight away. So I had a whole bunch of Dementors show up. Except they weren't Dementors, they were Red Deaths, a creature I made entirely whole cloth, but I'm drawing from the Green Lantern lore here from DC Comics. So Dementors, all about fear and depression and sadness, and they bring that out of you. They make you feel bad while trying to devour your soul. The Red Death do that with anger. So these are like red wraiths floating around, making you angry, showing you things that make you really angry. And the player playing Theodore the Vampire just relished in this. They'd been a soldier in World War I and then turned sort of against their will. And so now that they're this vampire full of rage and not quite sure what they are and what to do. So Theodore just ripped into these things, casting spells, ripping them apart. Even like recommended that I use one of their troubles against them to make them do like a bad thing, which I did. I gave them a fate token for, and they immediately spent it because they wanted to reach this high challenge number that I set for setting the whole ship on fire immediately, which they did. And then the magic item apparator dude, whose name he only came up with this session, and it was Bolkar, Blocker, something along those lines, a B word. Anyway, he then starts putting out the fires all over the ship. Winsome and Brad run to the top of the hill, get inside the stone circle, and start hurling Patronuses around the place. Patronuses? Harry Potter fans, let me know. Is it Patronuses or Patroni? I don't know. But anyway, they start hurling these things about, and we establish what Brad's Patronus is. Again, we sort of like paused the game, went around the table to like all pitch in, like, what would Brad's Patronus be? And we came up with an eagle. He is this show-off dude. It's going to be like an eagle, a Gryffindor type thing, because Brad is from Gryffindor. And with Winsome, I had it be a stallion, a beautiful stallion that would just gallop around. Kind of like Harry Stagg sort of thing. And yeah, it was just a really, really exciting combat. It was this thing that went on for like an hour, but it was fun the entire time because it was this constant back and forth what they were trying to do. It wasn't just hit them and do damage. I gave them like one stress box thing, like they were a one-hit wonder. You do damage to them, they die. But there were 12 of them. and they were really like gunning for people and moving quickly through things. And so I set up the different regions, and there were different traits going on. And one thing that they loved was setting things up, especially Brad's player. He set up things going on in the air and boulders flying around like in some Quidditch matches, so that he had those waiting for when he wanted to do one big like destroy these things, do a massive amount of damage in an area. So that's what we had. We had them creating advantages and setting up the situation, establishing what was going on, and then what seemed to them to be the most fun, and what I find to be what players find the most fun in the end, is being able to plan things themselves. What took a large chunk of the session, it was the end of the session, and they seemed to have the most fun with. And when it got down to that last dice roll, they were tense. It was deciding what to do next. That they had the pieces of the puzzle. They knew they needed to go after this Horus person. They knew now that the leeches were part of this plan to track down and keep tabs on vampires, but also on Velas and werewolves. And that maybe these weren't the only ones. But someone somewhere wanted to keep tabs on these things. And Cyrus and Horus, they were wanting to keep tabs on them. Who were they working for? What's going on here? Is there anything they can do about it? Do they want to allow this to play out or not? Because the whole, like, are vampires and werewolves treated as normal people? That's only a recent thing in the wizarding world. As far as the wizarding world is concerned, 50 years ago, you could legitimately gather a posse, get some torches and pitchforks, and kill a vampire. They weren't seen as people. So this being like a recent thing, there's a few allegories that you can draw with this, but they're wanting to find out what's going on. So they had a location to go to, a person to find, information to get. One of the things established was that Horus had a magically enchanted wheat field around their property. That was one of the advantages created by Theodore's player. So they decided what to do with the ship, and with Wensum, and with Wensum's crew, and with these criminals. And it was weighing up, like, okay, do we like just dump them in the ocean? Do we move the ship and dump them, or do we take them with us and then dump them elsewhere? Or what do we do with Wensum? Do we convince him of something happening? And so we did a round again of them like creating advantages after we discussed exactly what was going on, and they would just convince Wensum that it was a ship that was destroyed in the attack with the Red Deaths. Some driftwood and the survivors that were all encased in a block of ice. That's a further detail. They would just wash up onto the shore and all be safe. But as far as everyone was concerned, because they were all asleep, they don't know what's going on. As far as everyone was concerned, the ship was destroyed. The Red Death involved somehow. But I triggered some of these people's troubles to give them extra tokens to help them with getting enough for this high score that we made for this one check to overcome, to steal the ship and convince Wensum that it was this situation that caused it. So he wouldn't return to the Ministry of Magic and report, oh, these people stole a boat. So they managed to steal the boat, but because I'd tagged each of their troubles, he recognized who Brad Chadwick was, that he was this disgraced Quidditch star. He knew that there was something off about the vampire, but not that they were a vampire. He just knew something's odd. But Wensum never met the other guy. Wensum never met the magic item dude who was stealing the ship. So as far as he's concerned, it's just these two. But he goes away with a slightly bitter version of the experience now. He's going away thinking, you know what? Oh, I've got some chat. Not Sloghorn. What system do you run this game in? Is it a 5e adaptation? It's Patronus's singular. Okay, cool. Sorry, I've just seen this chat stuff. So the system that we're running this game in is Fate Accelerated. It's a very good system that I've found for running things like Harry Potter. I did consider a bunch of other systems. I considered taking Mutants and Masterminds or Savage Worlds. I considered just an adaptation of D&D 5e, but in the end, a lot of these systems were dependent on you defining spells beforehand and characters learning certain spells. But with Harry Potter, once you've learned the basics of magic, you can pretty much do any spell. So none of those other systems seem to fit. I wanted people to be able to go, right, you know what, I will want to create this effect now to do this thing. I want to be able to use a spell in a creative way. The Fate system was the one that came up tops for that. Thank you, Babybird1990, for telling me about the whole Patronus thing. But yeah, just to quickly wrap things up, because I don't want to keep you guys here forever. You don't want to hear me ramble on about all this all day. Yeah, they managed to convince him. They created a whole bunch of advantages, including tagging the fact that the Red Death was there in the first place, like an extra extenuating circumstance. The fact that they were quite convincing people, and all that kind of stuff. They managed to get enough. I think I set the difficulty at 8. So it's a really hard thing to achieve with the Fate system. For those that don't know, the Fate system, you roll 4 dice. They are d6s, and they have just a plus, a minus, or a blank face to them. 2 sides are blank, 2 sides are minuses, 2 sides are pluses. And you roll those dice, and you can get anything from a -4 to a +4. And then you add your stat to this, and you can then get an additional +2 or a reroll by spending a fate token and activating an aspect, a thing that exists there. Now, that aspect could be something about you. Your characters are created by creating these aspects. You can say that you are a convincing liar. And so anytime that you're needing to lie to someone, you can tag that convincing liar thing and get a +2, or get to re-roll the dice to try and achieve that score that you're needing to get to. You could say that you're an expert hand-to-hand combatant, and then whenever you're in a fight and you need to get an extra bit there, or if you're wanting to defend yourself in a fight, again, you could tag that and get an extra +2 to defend yourself and not take damage. It's a really nice, elegant system for quickly getting to the story part, the meat and potatoes of gaming. So that's what we're using for this system, and that's what they did. They got away with a boat. Winsome Hart apparated back to the Ministry of Magic with all of his guys and his prisoners in tow, and now the party has a ship that was stocked full of gold. It was stocked with a few magic items as well. It's a Ministry of Magic ship that's meant to just like sail around and find criminals that are evading international attentions. So the Ministry's set this ship up as like an international intergovernmental body ship crewed by a whole bunch of different people, not just the British Ministry of Magic. And that now seems to be something that isn't set up anymore. And so the ship exists in this quantum state. This could be a purely Ministry of Magic ship. This could still be that cross-border support vessel, like an Interpol, magical Interpol ship. We don't know, because the context isn't there for the players yet. And that's one of the great things about role-playing games in general, is that until the context is there for the players, you're not contradicting yourself. So you can change things until the players encounter it. So the idea that the best laid plans of games masters, referees, storytellers, they are laid to waste when they come in contact with the party. I'd say to a certain extent that's true. But you've also got to take into account the fact that sometimes you don't want them to remain as they are, crystallized in your mind. When they come into contact with the party, it is destroyed, and your job is to coalesce the dust and fragments of that idea into a sculpture that suits that group. That's what you're supposed to do with it. Another comment. Did you consider using GURPS? I'm not familiar with Fate, or would it have played too slowly? I considered using GURPS. I started reading the rule set of GURPS. I stopped reading the rule set of GURPS, and I picked up Fate Accelerated. Fate I had already come into contact with because of the Dresden Files role-playing game, which is run on Fate. That was run by a couple of friends of mine, and we had some enjoyment with that game. So I was aware of Fate, although I'd never played or run Fate Accelerated before. GURPS I've never played, and every time I sit down to digest GURPS, there's always a little thing. It's a little bit like World of Darkness for me. World of Darkness, very simple system, but not obvious in its flexibility, mostly because of the wording of things and where things are laid out in the books. It's difficult to see what's mechanics and what's narrative fluff, which is one of the things I like about Fate and the Unisystem. Dungeons and Dragons, to a great degree, especially the way I use it, is I like having a set of mechanics. Savage Worlds is another good example, and GURPS. I like a set of mechanics divorced from narrative, so you can create your own stories. But yeah, Fate Accelerated, quite good for Harry Potter. The fact that it's now being brought up again, I'll have another look at GURPS. I think it's worth keeping my options open for these sorts of things. If someone else wants a Harry Potter game, that sort of thing. But yeah, everyone seems to be enjoying the Harry Potter game. They got super excited about that ending, with figuring out what they're going to do, how they're going to pull it all off. So now they've got a boat and they're heading towards France, and we need to see what goes on there. The plan I have, and I've told them that these things are going out, but they don't need to watch them, and I don't think they are going to watch them, so I don't mind laying out what my plans are, and then seeing how that survives contact with them next time. So in a fortnight's time, I'll do another one of these, and we'll catch up and see how this went. But the plan is that Horace is going to be another step along this ladder that will lead ultimately to Grimblewald. It's an excellent system, but it does have a rather steep learning curve. I've enjoyed Savage Worlds, but mostly played the Deadlands variation. Oh, I love Deadlands! Oh my god, I love Deadlands! Deadlands is an amazing game. I once had a couple of clients that wanted to play Deadlands, and I pushed heavily I forget the name of the class now, but the one that plays poker to cast spells, that plays poker with demons. You just like get a poker hand, and how good that hand is determines how well the spell went off. And the narrative of it is like you're basically quickly playing a hand with a demon, and betting with the demon, like how much power the demon can give you to cast this spell. I'll check Fate out. Thank you for making it. Yeah, Fate Accelerated is free. Fate Accelerated is available online for free. Just Google it. It's a 45-page document, and you need like 7 of those pages. The rest of it is clarifying things. But Fate Accelerated, give it a look. Like the full Fate core system is more comprehensive, but if you're doing something that might just be a short-term thing, like I don't know how long this Harry Potter campaign is going to go, if you're wanting to try out something in the Fate system, Fate Accelerated, way to go. You've got 6 stats. The Fate system is great because it's very narrative driven. You're writing sentences, and that's the things that you tag mechanically in the game to get bonuses. Anyway, Nightmare 5002, we can talk about this all day. But I need to go because there's a new episode of Star Trek Discovery. But plan next time. A connection with Grimblewald is going to be uncovered. Horace is going to be seen to be working for Grimblewald. And the plan is that Grimblewald is going to be using these creatures, these augur monsters, to track down unwanted aspects of the wizarding world. Huckster. Thank you. They're wanting to track down the vampires and the werewolves and the Velas. For those that might not know, Velas are the really beautiful shapeshiftery type creatures that were featured in the Ilvermorny school from Harry Potter. The ladies that were there were part Veela, or I think they were just accused of being part Veela or something for being so beautiful. But anyway, um, so Veelas, werewolves, vampires, that's the ones that we know about for these monsters and that are being tracked down. The plan is Grimwald wants to track them, make sure that they can be kept away from wizards while he does his plan. For those of you that haven't seen the second Fantastic Beasts film, I'll not say, but it's basically proto Voldemort plan. This whole purity thing. That's what the revelation is going to be. They're going to get to this farmhouse and they're going to encounter Horus, a few other players of around her level. So them I plan to have disappear. So I'm thinking it's going to be they sneak up, and if they just want to like spy in before busting in all guns blazing, then they're going to see the end of a meeting, and these guys all flew out of there, go elsewhere, and now they've got names and faces of other people to track down wanting to hurt other communities. And what Horus is going to do is have a group of people that she's already sent out trying to do this to a werewolf community. Another village in France nearby to where her farmhouse is going to have a sizable werewolf community, and she's put these I forget what I called them now because it was fang orgs for the vampires. I think it was claw orgs for the werewolves. I'll double check. The claw orgs set them loose in this village, and so now all the werewolves are identified and things are starting to bear down on them. The fact that we've got a vampire in the party, I'm hoping will compel her to want to get involved, but I don't want to pull on their troubles and make them do things too much right now. I'm genuinely wanting them to try and figure out who they are as characters so that they can make their own decisions and things, and maybe change things on their character sheets if they want to. This is the first time playing this kind of game in this system, so I want to sort of ease them into it as well. So they can either go and help the werewolves and leave Horus, or try and deal with Horus right then and there. The werewolves might get hurt, or they could try and deal with Horus because they don't like her potentially hurting vampire communities, and sending some of these other people sort of like adjacent to her on the hierarchy to go and deal with vampire communities. They might just not care about the werewolves. They might go, well, I'm a vampire, not a werewolf. I'm not going to deal with this. So that's the gist of what the plan is for next time. Where they're going to store the boat, I need to work that out, because they need to park it somewhere, and they need to park it somewhere that the Ministry of Magic, or whichever body I end up deciding ultimately controls it, or built it in the first place, where they're not going to find it. And I wonder if they would just have some way to track it as standard anyway. There's a few things that I need to work out in the way of kinks. But I am actually thoroughly looking forward to the next session. To be a little callous, I don't always look forward to the next D&D session. Sometimes it's, well, in this case it's not D&D, but I don't always look forward to the next session with such excitement. I'm usually going, okay, they've hit that beat, let's move on to the next bit. What would be the next logical thing? And it's almost, well, it is work at the moment. While it is enjoyable work, far more enjoyable than any other work that I've done, it's still got that kind of like a process to it, assembly line, almost. Or at least my process of getting it done. I suppose it's kind of like a writer or a painter in that case, because like you would develop a process by which it becomes almost mundane, so that you can keep doing it on repeat and not exhaust yourself. So that's essentially what I've done. But this is one where I see the various directions it can go, and the way the system works, being able to like alter reality as I'm establishing it. It's going to be a lot of fun seeing where this goes and what happens next. So really looking forward to it. another one of these will be done for Crit It and Hit It, and another one done for the campaign happening adjacent to Crit It and Hit It. For those of you that don't know, some of my clients, they play in a game set in the same campaign world as the Crit It and Hit It game, and they also play in the exact same instance of it, so to speak, to borrow an MMO term. So events in one game affect the other. So I'm going to do a campaign diary for that as well. And those that are following Crit It and Hit It and want to know what else is happening in the world of Crit It and Hit It, they can see that. If anyone wants to have a game, let me know. I will see you guys when I see you. Another thing that I just want to mention to anyone watching this right now, we will be premiering the edited episodes of Crit It and Hit It. For those of you that don't know, because of my baby being born recently, I didn't get to edit them and release them on time. So, to sort of make up for that, we're going to be premiering them on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. First off, I've split each episode into 2, hence why the last 2 episodes that have not been edited are now going up in 4 pieces. And the second thing, the reason we're doing premieres is to be able to sit in chat with you guys, and we will be there talking with you, the Crit It and Hit It guys, so that we can watch it with you while it first sort of rolls out. Part of a way of an apology, so sorry, mea culpa. Yeah, I hope to see you guys there. Thank you for watching this. I hope you managed to get something from it. I know that someone already has. They've learned about the Fate Accelerator system. It's a very good system. I recommend looking it up. In terms of rules light systems as well, there's another one that might be worth your while looking up. If you can't find it with a Google search, try getting in contact with the man himself. Devi Brion Jackson devised a game called the One Line RPG, which has some very interesting mechanics, which I won't go into here because this isn't really the place for it. Some people didn't come here for that. But if you check the YouTube channel, youtube.com/mastertiergaming, there is a video on this one. It's called the One Line RPG. Look for that video. I give a description of it and a link in the description to it as well, actually. So go there. There you go. Save you a Google search. But yeah, check that game system out. It is 2 pages of A4 worth of rules, and it's really good for even more reduced down game mechanics. People that have never played a role-playing game before, this will probably be the system to introduce them to it without getting into rules and things. It's something you can play in an afternoon. Thank you very much for joining me. I've been Drew Murray. I probably always will be Drew Murray. Hey! Woohoo, Crit It and Hit It. Hi, Kerry. Yes. Thanks for joining. I'll see you guys later. Be sure to check the Crit It and Hit It premieres next week, and we'll see you guys there during those premieres, and also you can come and watch us live on Friday. Alright? See you later, guys. Bye.